Hi guys, let us understand today the Hibernate module 2, that is API and methods. So we'll see what are the APIs, Hibernate APIs we are having, and what are the methods in that API. Okay, so you can see here we already understood in the previous session what is architecture and all. So we'll have a look on that, and there is a session factory API, session API, configuration API. There are different type of instance state. So we'll see what are the different type of instance states and what is the transaction API, what is the transaction factory, so what is the query API. There are a number of API we are having in Hibernate. So we will see all these things. Okay, so let us try to understand all these API which we have. Okay, and what is the session management, and session JMS integration, JC support, and contextual session. Okay, so let us have a glance on that. So first of all, we'll talk about the session factory. So session factory is what here? A thread safe immutable cache of compiled mapping for a single database. So we can say session factory is a factory for session and a client of connection provider. So he will provide connections also. So session factory can hold an optional or cache of data that is reusable between transaction at a process or cluster level, and it is having a method like get current session. So once you say session factory dot get current session, you will get the existing current session. Get a statistics, retrieve the statistics for this factory. So all the statistics we can get. Once we say open session, session factory dot open session, how we can get the session factory instance. So we have to write here like let us say you are writing here session factory sf, okay, equal to what you can do. There is a configuration, right? So let us say there is a configuration conf dot, you can say here build session factory, build session factory. So once you are doing this session factory sf equal to configuration object conf dot build session factory, you are having the session factory object. This session factory can provide you the session. It's a factory of session, right? And you can say open session, so it is returning the session type, right? Look at here, open a stateless session, open a new stateless session. So these are the methods with the session factory which we can use. Okay, it's a thread safe immutable session. Next is the session. Now a session is what? A single threaded short live object representing a conversation between the application and the persistent store. So it wraps a JDBC connection and is a factory for transaction. Okay, so with the help of this session I can get a transaction and then we can start the transaction, right? So session holds the mandatory first level cache of persistent objects that are used when navigating the object graph or looking up objects by identifier. So, and this is available in the org hibernate.session uh, package. So this is a package for session API. So you can do what you can write just session s equal to or s1 equal to, let us say we are having sf, right, session factory. So we can say dot open session, open session. Once we are saying session factory dot open session or get current session, so we are ready with the session. With the help of this session we can do some kind of persistent, right? So it does some conversation between the application and the persistent store, right? So later I can say s1 dot save. Let us say I have a p1 which is a person type object, so that will get a store to the database. So this session is interacting. Also we can write before that what I can get a transaction. We can write here, say I just write here transaction t1 equal to, with the help of this h1 I can say begin transaction, begin transaction. So this guy will help me to begin the transaction, right? So it's wrap a JDBC connection and is a factory for a transaction, right? So with the help of this session we are getting the transaction object, and then we can say transaction dot commit, transaction dot rollback. Okay, so there are several methods we are having, like just now we have seen begin transactions, right? We can say session dot close, we can close the session, so end the session by releasing the JDB's connection and cleaning up. So we can say session dot clear, completely clear the session, cancel query, cancel the execution of the current query, right? So there are several methods we are having. I just use save. If you remember, there's a save method here we are having, right? So this method will help you to save the object. So it will insert persist the given transient instance first assigning a generated identifier. So it will insert the record. If you want to update, so save and update. Just update the person instance with the identifier of the given detached instance. So there are several methods we are having. Load, it will help you to load the records from the table. I can say session.load, so I'll get the records, right? We can check whether it is a session is connected or not. We can, if we want to remove the records, so we have a delete. So delete, this is one, save and update. This guy will help you to insert, update and delete the records, right? Session dot create query, create SQL query. This guy will help you to retrieve the records. So we can write some query here and that query will get executed. In turn you will get some query API and SQL query API. Okay. Now configuration class. This guy will help you to retrieve the configuration, represents configuration file of the application. An instance of configuration allows the application to specify properties and mapping documents to be used when creating a session factory. Usually an application will create a single configuration, build a single instance of session factory, and then instantiate session in thread servicing client request. The configuration is meant to only as an initialization time object. Okay, so session factories are immutable and do not retain any association back to the configuration. So you can do this configuration in a different way. So let us say I just write one code here. Consider I have a configuration, say conf, just equal to. Last time I took the conf object, conf dot build session factory for creating the session factory instance, right? So conf equal to, I can do here new configuration, new configuration, and then say dot configure, configure. Now here you can, if the configuration is mentioned in the, let us say the file you are having hibernate dot cfg dot xml file, if the configuration is here, no need to write anything here, right? But if this name is, let us say I have x by dot xml, okay, then what I have to do here, in double quotes I have to write xby.xml file, because all the configuration details are in this file. If the file name is here on hibernate.cfg.xml, so in that case you need not to pass anything, and if the name is something else, you just pass the name, your configuration is ready. Now with the help of this configuration you can obtain the session factory. So you can write cont.build session factory and you get the session factory. From the session factory you can obtain the session, right? So this is the configuration we are having here. Now we can look some of the methods regarding the configuration. So just now we have used one method, remember, configure, right? This is the configure. So use the mappings and properties, find the application resource name hibernate cfg dot. So it will use automatically if the file name is hibernate cfg.xml. If something else you have to mention here in between, right? So this is the another method we are having, configure file type. So you have to give a file name here, right? Okay. Now build session factory will give you the session factory. So you can say conf.build session factory, which will give the session factory, right? If you want to add some jar file, you can say config conf.add jar file, conf.add file, conf.add directory, add class. So there are a number of methods we are having for providing more resources with configuration. Okay. Now instance state. We are having a different type of instance state. One is a persistent, second is a transient, and third is the detached, right? So first is a persistent, second transient, and third is a detached, right? So persistent objects and collection short lived single threaded objects containing persistent state and business functions, right? This can be ordinary Java bean Pozo. So if we want to store this Pozo object to or map to the some of the tables, they are associated with exactly one session. Once the session is closed, they will be detached and free to use in any application layer. Okay. While transient and detached objects and collection instance of persistent classes that are not currently associated with the session. Transient is never association with the session. It never come into that, right? They may have been instantiated by the application and not yet persisted, or they may have been instantiated by a closed session. Okay. So this is what transient state and detached state. So we can look more for the transient and persistent detached. An instance of persistent class can be one of three different states, as we just now we've seen. Okay. So the Hibernate session object is the persistence context, and the three different states we are having like transient. So the instance is not associated with any persistent context. If any transient data you are having, that will not interact with your persistent context. Okay. It has no persistent identity or primary key value. So that will not interact with your database. Persistent, it is associated with the persistent context. Okay. If the instance is currently associated with the persistent context, it has a persistent identity, like there is some key, primary key for that, and can have a corresponding row in the database. So it will have a row in the database. Okay. So for a particular persistent context, Hibernate guarantee that the persistent identity is equivalent to the Java identity in relation to the in-memory location of the object. So it ensures that the data which we are having table and the object which we have in the memory, it is all uh, identical. Okay, it is equivalent. Detach, the instance was once associated with persistent context, but that context was closed. It is saying that it was having association, but now the context is closed, so it is detached, or the instance was serialized to another process. Okay, so it has a persistent identity and can have a corresponding row in the database. It can have, but for the current it is detached. For detached instance, Hibernate does not guarantee the relationship between the persistent entity and Java entity. Okay, yeah. Next is the transaction, a single threaded short lived object used by the application to specify atomic unit of work. So as we have seen that we are having session object, let us say the session object we are having, say we got session s1 equal to session factory dot open session. Okay, now I can do here that I can get transaction here, transaction t1 equal to s1 dot begin transaction, begin transaction. So transaction will get, and with the help of this transaction I can go for session dot save some of the poso object. Okay, and then finally I can say t1 dot commit, t1 dot rollback. So I can call number of methods. Okay, so it abstracts the applications from the underlying ZDBC, ZT or Corva transactions. A session might span several transactions in some cases. However, transactions demarcation either using the underlying API or transaction is never optional, right? Next is the connection provider. What is this? It's a provider for connection, a factory for a pool of JDBC connections. See, it's a connection provider means it is providing the connection. So I can say it is a collection or a pool of connections we are having. It abstracts the application from underlying data source or driver manager. It is not exposed to application, but it can be extended and or implemented by the developers. So you can extend and you can modify the logic and all. Okay, you can see the method from the transactions. As I said, you are having a commit. You can say transaction.commit, transaction.rollback, right? Transaction.begin or begin transaction. Sorry, just begin. Okay. So commit flush the associated session and end the unit of work, right? Rollback, it forces the underlying transaction to roll back. So whatever it happens, just roll back. We can say set timeout. We can set some time for that. We can check whether transaction is active or not, right? So these are the methods in the transactions we are having. Okay. Now what is a transaction factory? A factory for the transaction instance. It is not exposed to the application, but it can be extended or implemented by the developer. So we can extend this transaction a factory and give some more implementation. Okay, so just understand transaction factory is the factory of transaction. Okay, now there's a one query API we are having. So query, how I can get a query object? We are having a lot of methods here. Like once we do session dot create query, so I'll get a query object here. Okay, now with the help of that query object I can say here execute, update, iterate, list, scroll. We can call these methods. So list will list the results whatever we are having. Scroll, return the query results as a scrollable results. So we can go forward, backward, along. Okay, Iterate will iterate the query results, and execute the update or delete a statement. Okay, so we can call these methods from the session object, like session.iterate, session.find, session.list. Okay, so this is what query and query methods. It's a one interface in the org Hibernate package. Now, Hibernate also support JMX integration. As we know, the JMX is the one of the J2S standard for the management of Java components. So Hibernate can be managed via JMX standard services. And Mbin implementation is provided in the distribution org Hibernate JMX Hibernate services. So if you want to look more details, you have to go through the JBoss user guide, and you can get to know more about this JMX integration. Okay, and this is the last, like session management. uh, the Hibernate session lifecycle can be automatically bound to the scope of ZTA transactions. So we are having that facility in the Hibernate. This means that you no longer have to manually open and close the session. That will take care by the JTA. Okay, transaction. You also do not have to worry about transaction demarcation in your code. So that all it will take care by that ZTA transaction management or session management is there. There's a one HR deployment. What is HR deployment? The Hibernate JMX service is deployed using JBoss service deployment descriptor. So an ER and SR file is there. As it supports, it's just a RZIP file, like we are having jar and zip file and all, right. So as it supports all the usual configuration option of Hibernate Session Factory. Now, however, you still need to name all your mapping files in the deployment descriptor, and if you use the optional HR deployment, JBoss will automatically detect all mapping files in your HR files. Okay, so we can combine all these configurations files and all, and we can make one HR Hibernate archive deployment file. And once we deploy on the JBoss servers, that JBoss application server will uh, extract all and get to know what exactly it is. So it is easy to deploy the Hibernate applications on JBoss application servers. So for understanding all this in a better way, you have to explore the JBoss uh, manual. Okay, so that's all about the Hibernate API.